SAR is wonderful.
It's like one big, great community. It's a very warm environment, I would say.
It feels like a second home.
You walk into the school and 100 different people are greeting you with the happiest faces.
You have no idea who you're going to run into or say hi to.
People just care about each other.
That's the biggest part of SAR, it's the people. There are always people everywhere in the building.
You're always seeing your friends. You're not like isolated in one room. It's really open.
It feels so full of life.
It's really special.
From 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m., there's always something going on.
The energy is insane, and everyone just being together.
I just lay down on the lockers, hang out with friends, talk.
The bell rings and it's your recess time. You rush outside.
We play sports together. We're all dancing, singing.
We get to just express what we've been holding in and run around.
It's very fast-paced.
It's just so uplifting and happy.
There's just that constant bonding and cohesiveness.
It doesn't really feel like school.
It feels like a family.
That's what a pretty awesome day in school looks like.
We begin tonight with new warnings about the coronavirus, known as Covid-19.
In China, the number of infected continues to rise.
In Italy, more than 322 confirmed cases.
New Zealand, Nigeria, and 2 cases in Mexico.
The World Health Organization says the world is unprepared for an almost inevitable leap in infection.
Our message continues to be that this virus has pandemic potential.
Personally, I'm a news junkie, so I was keeping my eyes and ears open, and I couldn't help but notice what was going on in the Far East.
It was just this far away concept, there are people living through this in another place.
I remember reading a newspaper article and my daughter seeing it and her being nervous and just really calming her down, it's gonna be fine.
It was probably about 6:20 or so in the morning, I think, when I got a call from Rabbi Krauss. When you get a call on your cell at 6:20, you know that something's not quite right. And he said, we have a problem.
We had a parent in our school who was sick and in the hospital. It was very sensitive, obviously, that said that somebody had COVID. Nobody knew what it meant.
And so there was a decision to be made, right then. What should we do?
We just said, we have snow days, right? Let's just slow down. Let's have one snow day. And let's just, kind of regroup, figure out what's going on.
I was ready to go to school, and I got our snow day text that comes in and says school is closed for the day, which was very confusing because it wasn't snowing outside.
I was on the Throgs Neck Bridge, and Rabbi Krauss called, and he said, I do not have time to talk right now, but you need to turn around. School's canceled today. I said, is everything okay? And he said, I don't think so, and we'll speak later.
We thought that Wednesday would be back.
Nobody in a million years dreams that the following week, the world was going to shut down.
As we were kind of monitoring what was going on, I mentioned to our head of technology, said, I noticed that schools in Japan seem to be closing. If we have to do something like this, do you think we'd be able to conduct classes on Zoom?
I didn't know what Zoom was. And I remember getting an email that we're going to this thing called Zoom.
I said it pretty much jokingly, not thinking that it would ever be a real question.
And we had a meeting that night to learn what Zoom is on Zoom.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Wow, nice crew here. Here we go.
There's a lot of different rumors going around.
Is school going to be closed for a day? Is it going to be closed for a week?
So we had about 24 hours to make sure we trained all of our teachers to know how to operate Zoom classes.
Okay, team, onward and upward. Thank you for everything.
Please be in touch with any questions. That's what we're here for.
Thanks, Abby.
Thanks, Abby. You got it. You got it.
It was immediate.
By Wednesday already, we were planning lessons virtually. By Thursday, we were live virtually.
It was really remarkable. The tech team, the institution as a whole, figuring out how to get school up and running.
Our first priority was to make sure kids were okay.
I missed my friends, I missed my teachers, I missed being in school.
We had a community of people who were looking to us to create order in a time where nobody knew anything. And so there was no choice. We had to keep going.
Rabbi Krauss and I spoke very frequently over the phone in those days. We were speaking about the schedule, and he was pushing. We have to figure out a way to get more learning into the Zoom day for the students. And I was pushing back. I said, listen, our teachers are home with their kids. They're also scared. I think we're providing a lot as it is. And he said, I just need you to start thinking longer term. And it was when he said that, it sunk in at that moment that we were in it for the long haul.
I am going to share my screen. How's that sound?
It is really powerful to teach history when you have a way to connect to it personally.
One of the amazing things as a parent was getting a chance to hear the voices of their teachers piped into our home.
The parents were amazing. We gave them a lot of hard work.
To see the way they pivoted, the way they managed their classrooms remotely.
It was very challenging because all the materials need to come alive somehow in the computer.
The way their loving energy flowed into our home as a parent was incredibly heartwarming, inspiring, and one of the things that strengthened me.
Our teachers were heroic.
I really feel like we salvaged those months.
And we, some hard decisions to make. How many hours is it normal to teach on Zoom? How many hours is healthy for a kid to be on Zoom?
We had changed our schedule, made the class period smaller, had larger breaks.
You wake up in the morning, you open your screen, you go on Zoom, and then you do that until the end of the school day.
Zoom school for me was very hard. I have ADHD, so it's generally very hard for me to focus.
Sometimes kids put creative backgrounds, and sometimes they were funny, and I was happy to leave them, and other times I was like, you gotta change that.
And you combine that with the distraction of every family member being at home.
If you wanted to ask a question, you would unmute and then everybody talks at the same time.
So yeah, it was a challenge, definitely.
And I think we learned quickly that it's not gonna look the same, but we can get through our curriculum in some capacity.
The first Jewish holiday that came up was Purim.
Purim is an enormously significant day for us in school. It's really festive, celebratory.
That's a time of massive in-person gathering, children flooding the place in costumes.
So we had to plan a virtual Purim. And we had, for that high school Megillah reading, over 2,000 people that were joining us virtually. Everybody in costume, made up, all in. And on the one hand, it was, we wish we could really be together. And on the other, it was I can't believe that we figured out how to kind of be together.
We were in 6th grade when SAR shut down, and that was our bat mitzvah year. So I think a lot of girls were very sad to have their bat mitzvahs canceled.
We were trying to figure out how do we celebrate for this poor child who's having this monumentous occasion, canceled. That's when we began our tradition of Zoom bar and bat mitzvahs.
You wish it wasn't that way, but it was special in its own way.
To all my friends that participated in that, that was amazing.
Everyone kept asking the question, what's gonna happen next year? What are we doing next year? What are we doing next year? What are we doing next year? And the administrators reassured us, there's a plan, there's a plan, we're gonna make a plan.
All the principals were saying to each other, what are the guidelines? Let's wait for we were waiting for the guy, waiting for the Torah to come from heaven to say, this is what you're gonna do in September.
The city and the state were very late in trying to put up guidelines for schools because they were just consumed with the whole idea of whether or not schools can reopen. Jack Bentheim, the president of the school, basically, it was, threw down the gauntlet, it's a challenge.
Kids need to be in school. We got to figure out how to get them in the building.
And he said, okay, we are opening them September. What do we need to do to make this happen and make it happen safely?
One of the things that SAR did immediately was field a medical advisory committee.
I really want to give a big shout out to all the people who are manning the hotline. They're doing an amazing job.
There were 3 other physicians who have very relevant experience And then the school nurses were on the committee.
Talking about going out of your comfort zone, the nurses worked around the clock.
I took on the role of researching what kinds of procedures that we have to have in place from a medical standpoint or from a diagnostic standpoint in order to safely open school and have 2,000 people in these two buildings. Many walls came down.
I learned about HVAC in ways I'd never learned about before.
There was ventilation.
I learned about architecture.
Just the physical facility, what needed to change in the physical plant in order for the school to open.
Every 6 feet in this school, we had put a dot on the floor.
People asked me how we came up with some of these things. A lot of it was made up because we had to make it up. We said, how many kids in the class? 14.
In the lower school, there was a huge nursery building that had been under construction for several years.
If we have 14 kids in a class and they can't leave their classroom, we're running out of space.
It really got commandeered, and several classes from the elementary school moved into the nursery school building.
My office became a classroom. The business office became a classroom.
The gym had been reconfigured to be a large lunchroom.
We had to make probably 80 classrooms instead of 40.
There were various entrances that were open that had never been opened before, and different grades had to enter at different times.
So it was staggered arrival, it was staggered dismissal. It was get to your classroom and stay there, basically all day.
There was all kinds of procedures. It was complicated.
We just wanted children back in the building, masked. It didn't matter. We wanted to be in school together.
Your day's gonna look completely different from what we're used to. There's no sliding down the banisters because there's no going anywhere. There's no meeting on the steps. But, and this was the big but, you come into school every day.
That first day when the kids came back, it was exciting.
When we could come back together again and, sit in the auditorium or in the gym and be near each other, that was pretty emotional for me. I was so, so grateful.
I thought coming back I would be all out of sorts, but it was as if we never left.
You saw kids running to see their friends, teachers just who you hadn't seen in months.
Being able to be in the building and in each other's presence felt like a gift after not being able to do that for such a long time.
Our first day back from COVID was a little bit hard for me because I'm a hugger. Everyone knows I'm a hugger.
Not being able to see students' faces fully was really jarring. So there was a mix of emotions.
It was weird with masks, but after a few days, everyone kind of got used to it.
I was willing to wear whatever, as long as it meant I was able to be back at SAR and back with my community.
And what's amazing, we learned eyes talk. They speak. We didn't get to see mouths for a really long time, but we figured out how to communicate.
For everyone, it was a maturing moment.
The students got it. They really understood what had to be done.
It was I need to take responsibility for my health. And my mom isn't here to make sure I do what I'm told. It's up to me to make the right decision.
I do remember getting many emails from parents just saying, thank you so much for doing what you're doing so that my child can be in school. They're just so excited to be in school.
It worked. It doesn't mean it was easy, and work doesn't mean it was perfect, and work doesn't mean it was the same experience that they were used to.
Every lunch period, teachers were assigned. Your job is to make sure kids stay on their dots.
There were so many restrictions.
But we knew what it was like at the end of the previous school year where everyone had to be home. So being masked and on dots seemed like a great gift.
The fact that SAR had the capability to reopen as quickly as it did, as fully as it did, is not a privilege that every New York City school child had.
I knew that this was not the story of New York City. I knew that the schools up the block were not in school.
The losses at an educational level and a development level that these last 2.5 years have wrought is something that weighs on me very much.
The vaccines were approved in late December of 2020.
I think 80% of our teachers were vaccinated on the first day.
It definitely gave us a feeling of like armor.
And when we realized that one of the biggest challenges was going to be finding appointments, I reached out to partners and friends, parents at SAR, and said, we're pulling together a kind of a vaccine appointment and ride support WhatsApp group. Can we work together?
I was really blown away by the people who stepped in just in the community, you know, on this massive WhatsApp group.
Whether it was an elderly person that just needed a ride to the vaccination site, we would help arrange that.
And it was going all night. It was going all night. The night people, the morning people.
And it was really a wonderful experience being part of so many caring people that really were using their time during such a trying time to just rally around their community.
There was no rules about what kind of help we give or what kind of help we don't give. Somebody needs help, we try to help them.
We got vaccine appointments and rides for hundreds of community members in such a short time.
It didn't matter. It wasn't SAR parent, not SAR parent. People would call us from other places, like, fine, put it in the WhatsApp group.
I remember having phone calls with seniors in our community who were in tears of gratitude, saying someone I've never met, I don't recognize their name, saved my life by finding me an appointment and getting me a ride.
I remember driving out to Valhalla to the Westchester Medical Center, waiting in line for 3 hours, and I got that vaccine, and I felt invincible. And I thought that COVID is over. And the lesson you learned at COVID is that whatever you think the reality is, it's probably going to change soon after that.
When Omicron hit, it was humbling.
That was the toughest fall for me, for sure. I was blindsided.
The school year starts and you think you've beaten it because the vaccine has pretty much made us pretty safe.
We had a lot of COVID. It spread quickly.
I remember we had half the grade, 60 kids who were kind of, you know, we don't know what the story is, let's go test them.
I spent pretty much the majority of my time contact tracing, working with the nurses, working with the medical committee, working with Rabbi Krause.
It's the winter, we test them outside on the basketball court, and then some parents like, what are you doing? Like, why is my kid in the cold?
It's a big community, and we have a lot of overlapping values, but not everything. And there were definitely disagreements.
We wanted to be honest with people and straight with people, but part of the honesty was, we don't always know.
And there are gonna be times where you feel like you're making my child not safe or you're overdoing it.
We're trying to make the best decisions that we can make with integrity, and we're trying to transparently communicate that.
You gotta strike that balance between what do we need overall as a community and how do you respond to the individual.
And we cannot lose the strength of community fabric as we live through those disagreements.
And I'm impressed and proud with the way that ultimately we pulled together.
The day the masks came off, we gathered as a community, and it was surreal.
It happens to be the 2-year anniversary of the day that we started this whole story.
On one hand, felt like no time had passed, and on the other hand, felt like, wow, how much time has been lost.
I'd forgotten how much we communicate with gestures of our face, with a little smile. Those kinds of communications are so critical. It's sort of forgotten how critical they were.
The fact is that we went through a really hard time, and these are kids who missed a part of their childhood.
I mean, as much as we try to minimize their suffering, it's, you know, those are 2 years that were not normal 2 years.
I would say I mainly lost out on time.
They didn't get the experience they needed with social challenges. They didn't, but they did get something else in return.
There was a lot of strength, and I think kids found their own strength.
I'm part of the generation that experienced something that's never happened before, and it feels like special.
And they got a sense that they were part of a community that cared about them, that was committed to them.
I think I learned that, like, when there's like a hard time, it kind of pulls people together the most.
Teachers found their own strength, and the community found its strength.
It's history making, and it left us in a very different place, it really did.
We learned through Judaism that every story or every experience that happens, there's always something you could learn from it.
It taught me things about my teaching. Our teaching is forever impacted by what we were forced to do when we were only teaching on Zoom.
I think I learned not to take things for granted.
How powerful a smile can be.
Eating lunch with a friend. To be with my teachers in person and learning in person.
Walking around the halls, seeing friendly faces.
Just the ability to see my friends every day.
I think the story of how SAR lived through, lived with COVID, it's still an unfolding story, but it's also a story we can start to tell now.
You know, Pesach, I would say, is the model, right? We sit around all night and we tell the story of something that happened a long time ago because it's our story, because we want to learn from that story, because we want our kids to know.
And for us, I think that's what stories are. They remind us of our humanity. They remind us that we are, at every turning point, at every historical event, at the center we're humans who were having real experiences, had feelings like us, had fears like us. And those stories not only help us better understand our histories, but also help us better prepare for the future and make sense of our present.
When I think towards the future, I feel like I never want to go back there, but I do want to take with me the power of community that I felt then and the strength that it provided, I think, for all of us.